Persia, under the rule of Darius the First, was already expanding into mainland Europe and had subjugated Ionia, Thrace, and Macedonia by the beginning of the 5th century BCE. Next in King Darius' sights were Athens and the rest of Greece. During the Ionian Rebellion and associated revolts in Aeolis, Doris, Cyprus and Curia were military rebellions by several Greek regions of Asia Minor against Persian rule, lasting from 499 BC to 493 BC. At the heart of the rebellion was the dissatisfaction of the Greek cities of Asia Minor, with the tyrants appointed by Persia to rule them, were supported by troops from Athens and Eretria. The Ionians marched on, captured, and burned Sardis. However, on their return journey to Ionia, they were followed by Persian troops, and decisively beaten at the Battle of Ephesus. This campaign was the only offensive action by the Ionians, who subsequently went on the defensive. The Persians spent 493 BC reducing the cities along the west coast that still held out against them, before finally imposing a peace settlement on Ionia which was generally considered to be both just and fair. The Ionian Revolt constituted the first major conflict between Greece and the Persian Empire, and as such represents the first phase of the Greco-Persian Wars. Although Asia Minor had been brought back into the Persian fold, Darius vowed to punish Athens and Eretria for their support of the revolt. Moreover, seeing that the myriad city-states of Greece posed a continued threat to the stability of his empire, according to Herodotus, Darius decided to conquer the whole of Greece. In 490 BC, he sent a naval task force across the Aegean to subjugate the Cyclades, and then to make punitive attacks on Athens and Eretria. The Persian force first landed at Charistos, and then Eretria in northern Euboea, sacking both cities before moving across the strait to the eastern end of the Bay of Marathon on the 1st and 2nd of September. Under the guidance of Miltiades, who had actually fought under Darius in the latter's campaign in Scythia, the Athenian army marched quickly to block the two exits from the plain of Marathon and prevent the Persians moving inland. They requested help from Sparta, but because they were celebrating the festival of Carnea, therefore the Spartan army could not march to war until the full moon rose. Athens could not expect reinforcement for at least 10 days. The Athenians would have to hold out at Marathon for the time being, although they were reinforced by the full muster of 1,000 hoplites from the small city of Plataea, a gesture which did much to steady the nerves of the Athenians, and won unending Athenian gratitude to Plataea. The 1,000 Plataeans were commanded by Aramnestos, and the Athenians fielded some 9,000 hoplites. Therefore, the total force numbered approximately 10,000 men. While overall command of the Persian army was in the hands of Datis, as Darius did not lead the invasion in person. Second in command was Artaphernes, Darius' nephew. The total strength of the Persian army is unclear, but judging by the number of ships there may have been some 90,000 men. The actual number of fighting men may have been 20,000 to 25,000 men. Most of these were infantry and archers, with perhaps another 2,000-strong cavalry force. The two opposing armies were representative of the two approaches to classical warfare. The Persians favored long-range assault using archers followed up with a cavalry charge. The Persian infantry carried a lightweight wicker shield and were armed with a long dagger or curved sword, a short spear, and composite bow. While the Greek warfare favored heavily armored hoplites, arranged in a densely packed formation called the phalanx, with each man carrying a heavy round bronze shield, and fighting at close quarters using spears and swords. For approximately 5 days, the armies confronted each other across the plain of Marathon in stalemate. That worked in favor of the Athenians, since it gave time for the Spartans to arrive with reinforcements. On the 11th of September, it seems that the Greeks drew up their battle lines in the center of the bay, while the Persians had embarked only half of their infantry. Forming a front 8 men deep, the Greeks lengthened their lines to match the Persians, and thinned out their center group to 4 men deep. The Plataeans were positioned on the right flank, while the Athenians were in the center and on the left. The best Persian troops commanded from the center, perhaps as many as 10 men deep. Some modern commentators have suggested this was a deliberate ploy to encourage a double envelopment of the Persian center. However, this suggests a level of training that the Greeks are thought not to have possessed. Consequently, this may have been decided at the last moment, so that the Athenian line was as long as the Persian line, and would not therefore be outflanked. The Persian cavalry is mysteriously absent from the battle scene. It may have been that Datis could not use them to good effect, because of the sporadic trees which dotted the plain, or that he had in fact sent them, or was planning to send them, with other troops towards Athens. Perhaps in an attempt to take the city while the Greeks were at Marathon. When the lines were formed, Miltiades ordered the army to advance towards the Persian, while under fire from the Persian archers. Herodotus implies the Athenians ran the whole distance to the Persian lines, a feat under the weight of hoplite armory generally thought to be physically impossible. More likely, they marched until they reached the limit of the archers' effectiveness, the beaten zone, roughly 200 meters, and then broke into a run towards their enemy. The two armies clashed. A lengthy and bloody struggle ensued, with eventually the center of the Persians, perhaps predictably, pushing the weakened Greek center back. In the words of Herodotus, they fought a long time at Marathon. In the center of the line the foreigners prevailed, where the Persians and Sakai were arrayed. The foreigners prevailed there and broke through in pursuit inland, but on each wing the Athenians and Plataeans prevailed. The Athenian wings quickly routed the inferior Persian levies on the flanks, before turning inwards to surround the Persian center, which had been more successful against the thin Greek center. The Persians, now routed on the left and right, fled back to their ships, but to reach them they had to cross a wide marshy area. In the confused retreat the Greek wings closed into the center and attacked both the Persian center, and pursued the fleeing Persian flanks, inflicting heavy casualties. Fierce fighting continued around the Persian ships, and it was in this action that Callimachus was killed. The battle ended when the Persian center broke in panic towards their ships, pursued by the Greeks. The Greeks captured 7 ships of the enemy, but the rest of the fleet escaped with any Persians who had managed to climb aboard. Herodotus records that 6,400 Persian bodies were counted on the battlefield, and it is unknown how many more perished in the swamps. He also reported that the Athenians lost 192 men and the Plataeans 11. Among the dead were the war archon Callimachus and the general Stesilaos. In the immediate aftermath of the battle, Herodotus says that the Persian fleet sailed around Cape Saunion to attack Athens directly. A messenger, traditionally identified as Philippides, was sent to inform the city of their victory. He ran at full speed a distance of 42 kilometers, from Marathon to Athens, managed to arrive, and after announcing the victory, collapsed and died, which according to, is the origin of the modern Marathon. No doubt exhausted, the Greek army was, nevertheless, compelled to march back at the double to Athens, to defend the city. The Athenians arrived in time, to prevent the Persians from securing a landing, and seeing that the opportunity was lost, the Persians turned about, and returned to Asia. The defeated Marathon barely touched the vast resources of the Persian Empire, yet for the Greeks it was an enormously significant victory. It was the first time the Greeks had beaten the Persians, proving that the Persians were not invincible, and that resistance, rather than subjugation, was possible.